Question number 2, James Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Did he ask for or receive any advice or assessment from officials about the stated legal threat of up to $30 million from the Al-Khalaf group? If so, what was the nature of that advice?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, I received advice from ministry officials prior to meeting with Mr Al-Khalaf in relation to both legal advice Mr Al-Khalaf was known to have taken regarding a compensation claim and the risks of a claim breach of New Zealand's WTO obligations. These formed part of an oral briefing.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Does he stand by his statement to me in this House on the 28th of May 2015 that, quote, the government took advice from very senior officials in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, including the legal division, end quote?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
I'd want to see the full context of any statement, but I'd generally be happy to stand behind all of my statements in this regard.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
What then is his response to the Auditor-General's finding that, quote, there was no assessment by ministry officials of the substance of that legal risk, end quote?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, I agree with that assessment. I have always been clear that in relation to the Cabinet paper that we made no such claim, and I repeat what is in the introduction to this piece of the Cabinet paper, where it says, while the Saudi parties would have preferred to enter discussions on the basis of seeking compensation for commercial loss as a result of government decisions, and indicated that they had received legal advice suggesting they pursue a claim for between 20 and 30 million, the government has made it clear that we would not be a party to such negotiations. Those sentiments are reflected in the report of the Auditor-General.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Now that the Auditor-General's inquiry is complete, will he now give us his response to claims made by George Asaf on the Nation on July 3rd that he had, quote, no appetite or intention, end quote, of ever suing the Government of New Zealand?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr Speaker, I'm aware that he and others, the member and others, wish to cast doubt on what has been said in that respect, and I simply draw his attention to page 8 of the Auditor-General's report, where, as a matter of fact, the Auditor-General found, and I quote, the Al-Khalaf group indicated that it considered it should be paid compensation of $24 million, unquote.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
A point of order, James Shaw.
Mr Speaker, my question was whether Mr McCully would answer a response by, a claim by George Asaf on the Nation, not in relation to what he was quoting from the report.
I think on this occasion, I'm going to give the member the benefit of the doubt. I think it has been addressed, but I will allow the member to ask the question again so that we're absolutely sure that it has been addressed.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Now that the Auditor-General's inquiry is complete, will the Minister now give us his response to claims made by George Asaf on the Nation on July 3rd that he had, quote, no appetite or intention, end quote, of ever suing the Government of New Zealand?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr Speaker, I am aware of many different claims that have been made in relation to the history of this matter. The Auditor-General had the opportunity to view all of the paperwork, talk to any parties that she felt she should talk to, and recorded her finding on page 8, and I quote, the Al-Khalaf group indicated it considered it should be paid compensation of $24 million.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order?
Yes,
Point of order, James Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, my question was in relation to a specific claim by Mr Al-Khalaf's business partner, George Asaf. The Minister has not addressed that question.
I've heard quite enough. The essence of the question, will the Minister now give his response to that statement? And the Minister has certainly given his response, clearly not to the satisfaction of the member, but I think on this occasion, when I hear the answer that's been given, it was actually addressed on the first occasion. Carry on with supplementaries.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
So was Mr Al-Khalaf's business partner, George Asaf, lying when he said that they had, quote, no appetite or intention, end quote, of suing the New Zealand government?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr Speaker, I have no responsibility for what Mr Asaf or anyone else, including various television programs, might have said about this matter. The member and others kicked up a large fuss and used some very florid language and made some very strong accusations to provoke an Audit Office inquiry into this matter. And the Auditor-General spoke to everyone she wanted to speak to, looked at all of the paperwork that was available and made it very clear that the Al-Khalaf group indicated it considered it should be paid compensation of $24 million. That is the direct quote from the Auditor-General's report.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Does he accept the finding in the Auditor-General's report that, quote, settlement of a grievance was provided under the guise of a contract for services, end quote?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr Speaker, I've made it clear that that I accept all of the conclusions of the Auditor-General's report, including those referred to by the member, and also, in particular, the statement made by the Auditor-General that the contract for services was a fully lawful contract for services and that all of the elements of the contract were discharged in relation to the appropriation granted by Parliament.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Given that response, that he does accept that the deal was a settlement of a grievance, why was it not signed off by the Crown Law Office or a court judgment as is required by Cabinet Office Circular CO 15-4?
Mr Speaker,
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, the Auditor-General has made very clear her finding as to the legality of the arrangement. The report makes it very clear that the contract for services was a fully lawful contract for services and that it was undertaken in a manner that was consistent with the appropriation granted by the Parliament.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, James
Mr
Shaw.
Speaker, my question was quite specific, outlining a quote in the Auditor-General's report about the requirement for payments above $75,000 to be signed off by the Crown Law Office or a court judgment. Mr McCully has not responded to that question.
No, Mr McCully, in my opinion, has responded and has addressed it, clearly not to your satisfaction, but he's effectively said that it met the requirements. So that's his answer that's been given to the House today.